Hello, Pre-Algebra class. I hope that you're having a good day so far. And what we're going to do today is we're going to start looking at this lesson from Chapter 7, Section 7 about writing inequalities. But in addition to that, I'm just reminding you that you have a quiz on Section 7.5 and 7.6 tomorrow. And so if you need to look back at the videos for that, that might be a good idea. And I'm also going to give you a little shortcut on a question that I'm going to end up counting as a bonus on your quiz and by the end of this lesson. So please make sure that you stay tuned throughout the whole lesson on this, okay? All right, so we're taking a look at the idea of writing inequalities. Okay, so inequalities and word problems is really what we're taking a look at. We need to review the idea of at least and at most, making sure that we can define variables and solve inequalities. And that's also good, the solving part, to help you also get ready for your quiz tomorrow. The word problem part will not necessarily be on tomorrow's quiz. However, the solving of the inequalities will be, so let's just take a look at that. At least means that you have that amount or more. So for example, if I have at least $15 in my pocket, I might have 15, I might have 16, I might have 17, 18, 19. So that means at least means that number and maybe even more. At most means that you would have that number or less. So if I had at most $20 in my pocket, that means that I could have 20, but I couldn't have 21. I might have 5, I might have 15, I might have 18, but at most $20. So keep in mind these words, they're important when we're thinking about inequalities. All right, so let's move right along and let's begin to take a look at solving these inequalities and writing equations. Define a variable. Remember, define a variable means just like what it did before, you have to choose a variable and say what it represents. So 4 times a number decreased by 6 is at least 72. Okay, so that means you pick a variable such as n to represent the number. N is the number, and I really, even though I can't see as much of the things that you are writing, some of the things I'm going to have you take pictures of and email to me as we do these, so that I can make sure that you're doing things like defining a variable and graphs and things. But a lot of it you can just type into an answer sheet, so we'll get on with that for your quizzes. So 4 times a number, you're actually literally going through the words and thinking what they mean. 4 times a number decreased by minus 6 is at least, remember what we're thinking about as at least. At least, okay, I'm thinking I have at least $20 in my pocket. That means I could have 21, 22. Okay, so at least greater than or equal to 72. And you can stop yourself and really think about it that way. Then you write skills that we've been developing. Equal to what we get, like 78 divided by 4. So you're thinking 1, 4 goes into 38 9 times. 9 times 4 is 36, with 2 left over. Remainder divisor. And then you would reduce 2/4, noticing that 2 goes into the numerator and 2 goes into the denominator. So your final answer is, it's not just 19.5. So the number is at least 19.5. Now, since it's a word problem, the best thing to do would be to go ahead and write that out as a word, as words. The number is at least 19.5. Okay, really, word problems should be answered with words. And problems that don't involve words, you don't have to, but just keep in mind answering a word problem with words is usually the best way to present an answer. All right, let's move on to another one. I just want to check something real quick here. Okay, good. All right, so let's make it into a travel question. Now, this right now we're kind of on hold as far as going places, but when we travel, we can think about the amount of things that we can fit into our car. You might have enough room for the suitcases to weigh at most 250 pounds. Now, in this example, we're going to think about that these suitcases and all, each person would be putting the same amount in each suitcase. I know that's a little unrealistic, but we're just going to do that for the sake of this problem. So together your suitcases can weigh at most 250 pounds when you take your vacation. The cases each weigh 5 pounds, so that's the empty cases. How much can each person put in their suitcase if there are 6 people in your family? So 6 people, 6 cases. So I'm just going to pick a variable so that we have something to work with. We're going to say that P, oops, let's make that a little darker. P equals the amount each person, the pounds, the amount each person can put in. Okay, so the cases themselves weighs 5 pounds. But then you're going to put stuff into those suitcases. So you've got 5 plus P. Okay, that is the suitcase and what you put into it. There are 6 of those because there are 6 people in the family. Each one has a case. Each one is putting some stuff into the suitcase. And it says at most 250 pounds. More than 250 pounds with all of the people in there also could overwhelm your car. So you've got 250 pounds at most. So that means, all right, I can't go over that amount. So I must be smaller than, but I could do 250 pounds. So less than or equal to. I chose P because P for me is making me think of the number of pounds of stuff that I could put in a suitcase if I was on this family trip. Okay, so when you solve this, we need to distribute. 6 times 5 is 30, and 6 times P is 6P. Has to be less than or equal to the 250 pounds. We're going to take away 30 from both sides. So 6p has to be less than or equal to 220 pounds. I need to do a little bit of dividing because I need to finish it off by dividing by 6. And we'll have 220 divided by 6. Let's do 6 times 3 is 18. That gives us 4. 6 goes into 46 times. I get 36. 4 left over. 36 and 4 sixths, which equals 36 and 2/3. P is less than or equal to 36 and 2/3. So what we need to do to be able to put this into a good answer for this is that each person can put at most, each person can bring at most 36 and 2/3 pounds. Once again, because it's a word problem, we can write an inequality to start solving it, but we need to have our final answer showing the words and what we really meant by that. Okay? All right, so you always want to go back and make sure that your answer makes sense. So 36 and 2/3 pounds, there were 6 people. If we can just do a quick estimate, okay, you're thinking about, we have about 6 times 40, which is about 240, plus about 30, it's about 270. So we're in the ballpark of the 250 when you do a little bit of quick estimating on your answer. So you go back, do a quick check, make sure that you worked carefully and you're in pretty good shape with that type of a problem. Okay, let's move on. Let's hit another one of these word problems. Word problems do not have to be scary. All right, I know some people go, oh, word problems, but they really don't. Okay, this is a pretty practical question right here. You need an average of at least 84 on your test to get a B. You have scores of 90, 75, 89, and 95. What score do you need in order to get a B or above? It should say, what score do you need on the next test? In order to get a B or above. So we want to have at least 84. Now, in order to do that, you need to think about what it means to average, and you need to know how to do that, and then think of the idea of at least 84. So what we are going to do is we're going to let T equal the score on the test. Okay, and we're going to think about how you average numbers. Now remember, when you do an average, you add up the numbers and divide by how many there are. So I have 90 plus 75 plus 89 plus 95. But we have one more number to add in, and that's the unknown test. And then we can divide all those numbers by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I said the score you need in order to get a B or above. So in other words, it's okay, you'd be perfectly happy if you got an A as well. So you need to have at least an 84, so greater than or equal to an 84. Now we know that in your case and in your other classes' cases, it's not just made up of tests. You've got quizzes and you've got classwork and homework and those type of things also included. But you're getting an idea of what's going on behind the scenes when your grades are being calculated. So keep in mind that you might have a certain average, but then you put another test in and then that changes the whole thing. So what we need to do is we need to simplify a little bit. So the first thing that we really should do here is add up our values, our 90 and our 75 and our 89 and our 95. Oh, cool. Somebody got an A. That's great, whoever that person is. So 5 and 5 is 10 and 9 is 19. I'm going to carry the 1. I have 10 here. 10 plus 9 is 17. 17 plus 8 would be 25. 25 plus 9 would be 34. And if you add faster than me, then fantastic. So I have 349 plus t divided by 5 is greater than or equal to 84. What I hope that you remember is that you can put this in parentheses because it's in a grouping symbol and multiply both sides by 5 in order to get the variable by itself eventually. So when I do that, these 5's cancel out and you have 349 plus t. Let me fix this up a little bit. Okay. All right, you have your eraser, I have my eraser here. So here's our good reason for working in pencil. Greater than or equal to, I need to take 5 times 84. 5 times 4, 20. 8 times 5, 40, so 42, 420. And then I need to subtract 349 from both sides. All right, resuming. The phone is done ringing now. And here we go. So we're taking away 349 from both sides. And we have t is greater than or equal to, let's take 420 minus 349. We have to borrow. Don't forget about borrowing. We have to borrow again. 71. Okay, so this person needs to get at least 71%. Okay, so here's an interesting thing about that. Okay, many of you might have been surprised and say, "Wow, that person, that's a D in our school. That somebody could get a D and still manage to keep their B." Well, because there had already been 4 tests, and 3 of them were very good, solid tests. One of them was an A and a couple Bs. There was one that was a low C. But that's what happens with averaging, is that the averaging, if you get a good solid average and then you have one low one that sneaks in, if it's not too low, you still can manage to get a decent grade. The same thing though works on the other side, is that you have to be careful, because if you're on a borderline somewhere and your grade is like right on the borderline, then your grade then could possibly drop you. So you've got to be very, very careful on these things, and kind of have an idea, think about, and the more grades that you have, the less each one of them is going to really hurt your grade, and like one great grade isn't necessarily going to help. You have to be consistent in your pattern in order to make sure that you're getting the grades that you want. Okay. All right, so we're going to take a look again back at more of a generic type of a problem here. Define a variable, write an inequality, and solve. Anytime it says to define a variable, we need to pick one. Here's my n. I'm going to say n is the number. And so 3 times a number, 3 times a number increased by plus 17 is at most, okay, think it through in your head, at most that means it would be smaller than or equal to 26. So 3n plus 17 is at most, there's your inequality, 26. And then you'd need to do your algebra that you know how to do, which means that whatever you do to one side, you have to do it to the other side. So we're taking 26 minus 17. So this would give us a 9. Divide both sides by 3. And you could say the number is at most 3. It can be 3, but it could also be less than 3. It could even be negatives the way this problem is written, but it could be 3 or less. So there are those things. Okay? Now here's this thing I said that because of the way the lessons have come out, this is partly from another section, but I didn't really emphasize this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little trick, which is fantastic, and it's going to help you. There will be a question on your quiz that I'm going to count as a bonus. But I think that you guys can handle this, and this is going to be super, super helpful when you go into algebra to be able to know this little trick. Okay, so when you've got these numbers on both sides of the equation and you're trying to solve, okay, and I do want you to all keep in here and watch it, even though I'm counting this as extra credit. It really is something that in algebra you're going to need to know. What we need to do is what you might think is, okay, I need to make sure that I undo this division first because I've got some groups. I'm going to show you the long way first, and then I'm going to show you the short trick for this. So that means that you would be multiplying both sides by 7. Okay, so you'd be left with a minus 4 over here because the 7s would cancel, and you'd be left with a minus 5 over 3 times 7. Once again, I've got my parentheses here. And then in order to get rid of this 3 divided by 3, you'd have to multiply both sides by 3. I've got my group here, so I'm going to multiply by 3. And so the 3's would cancel out, and I'd be left with over here 3 times a minus 4 equals 7 times a minus 5. And then what you do is you would distribute 3a minus 12 equals 7a minus 35. You would need to take away something from both sides, and that'll give you negative 12 equals 4a minus 35. And then we'd need to add 35 to both sides, giving you 4a equals 23. And then divide both sides by 4. which would give you 23 divided by 4, which would give you 5 3/4. Okay, and what I would like to do is I'd like to show you a little shortcut to that, and it is called cross multiplication. You know about cross canceling, but here's another thing that you can do when you have an equals. I'm going to go back to our original problem here, okay, and show you where this comes from. So I have a minus 4 over 7 and a minus 5 over 3. Okay. Now what we noticed here is we multiplied by 7 and then we multiplied both sides by 3. So we kind of did a couple of steps here, and what we were left with was 3 times a minus 4 equals 7 times a minus 5. What that leads us to is something that it's a little trick that we use sometimes to solve these type of problems called cross multiplication. It's not cross canceling, it's cross multiplication. And what it does is it puts these two steps into one thing. It almost looks like a heart when you come around, but you take whatever is here and you multiply it times what is here. So we bring it around like this, cross multiplication. 3 times a minus 4. And that equals whatever is here times whatever here equals 7 times a minus 5. Now in this way you really have done the same thing to both sides of the equals. You've multiplied both sides by 3 and you've multiplied both sides by 7, and what comes out is this fun little trick called cross multiplication, which will always work out true for you, which will help you with your work, which will make things easier. Very, very, very helpful in Algebra 1 and beyond. So that's a little trick. From after here, you do the same steps as down here. 3a minus 12 equals 7a minus 35. Taking away 3a from both sides. Once again, I'm running through all these steps again just because some people need to see them over and over again, and that is exactly where you need to be, is doing things over and over until you're good at it. Then adding 35 to both sides. 4a equals 23. And then divide by 4. So that a equals 5 3/4. And that is about it for today. Don't forget to look back over your things for sections 7.5 to 7.6. Be on the lookout for the quiz to get emailed to you. I plan on sending you a PDF of the quiz, and then there will be a link provided for you to actually fill in your answers. And so that's how you're going to be filling in your answers. You'll click on the link, you'll fill in your answers. It will be partially auto-graded, but I will hold the responses until I can review them. And then afterwards, you'll be able to get your grades, and then I'll be able to go over those quizzes with you. All right, thank you so much. I love you all, and I miss you, and I can't wait to see you again. Have a wonderful, beautiful, blessed day.